hello everyone. Welcome to View from Love. I am your host, Allie Ray, and I am thrilled to have you on this podcast journey of extraordinary love. Today's guest is particularly close to my heart, and I know that you are going to understand quickly why. She's just magic. Sarah Snow is a clear channel to the Holy Spirit. She is an activator to the soul's divine blueprint, an accelerator to the soul path, assisting individuals align with their true nature. Her soul mission is to lead individuals out of darkness and confusion and back towards the path of truth. After a close encounter with death in 2016, she gained the ability to read what she considers the Snowflake Signature of the soul. And she assists those that are ready to step into their journey toward truth with greater clarity, activating a deep remembrance of who they are and the divine gifts they came here to share. So this is going to be a very magical show. And I'm so honored and blessed to have dear sister Sarah Snow with us today. Welcome, Angel.
Thank you
so excited to have you here.
It's a pure blessing to be here with you. And even your frequency, by the way that you speak, Allie, just for your introduction, I just thank you for that, because this is the transmission of frequency actually that we give today, not just by words, but by the way that you feel. So for anybody that watches or listens, it's about listening with the whole body, not just with the ears, and listening to the way that the words hit you and the frequency that it creates inside and what it wants to activate. This is a story, yes, but it's also more of a transmission. So thanks for allowing me the space to give this transmission.
Absolutely. It's for me, it's a divine honor to be in the sharing of the transmission, because it also helps to share the example of our oneness.
Yes.
And that's something all souls are returning to, the remembrance of that.
Yeah. And recognizing that our shared frequencies together co-create our reality in which we exist. And sometimes we don't know what's possible in our reality without going through a near-death experience. But sometimes when we let go of this conventional life and reality that we feel exists, and we let God, or we let a deeper version, of ourselves co-create and feel, then we can start recognizing that our reality shifts very fast into something that's, more peaceful, more graceful, more easeful. And I think that's the reason why we're all here listening.
Yes.
Is because there is a call towards opening ourselves in a way to understand why we create our own reality and how we can shift that, by listening to experiences of people that have crossed over and returned, like myself, or other people like Allie that have the natural transmission already embedded in her, so that we can finally start to maneuver the world through feeling rather than by just our sheer belief system that's based on a lot of our programming, which is what happened to me when I died. A lot of the societal and cultural programmings that held me back from my true essence, and that hold many people back from their true essence, could be actually shed. So I can explain many things today. And I don't know if Allie, you want to lead me into what you feel would be best for me to share, but
I really feeling, Sarah, that it would be very helpful for people to hear about your story, about your death experience, and really who you were and the life you were leading up until then.
It's a totally different person.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. I can start from the beginning, and feel free, if you want to ask, or you feel like Spirit's calling you to go deeper into a certain place, then just please do that. But I guess if I would just get started, it all kind of started when I was born.
Yes.
Because, we can look at this one particular near-death experience as being sort of a pinnacle, or like a huge awakening point. But I believed that, even when I was little, I was having little deaths like all of us, little experiences that bring us closer to this place of oneness. but our minds tend to resist all those experiences potentially and still lock us into being like, oh, well, that was just a coincidence, or oh, that was just this thing that happened, or that's kind of interesting, or ooh, that gave me shivers, but I don't know what, or, you know. But what I've learned from this journey and learned from the death experience is that nothing is actually not on purpose.
Yeah.
Everything is synchronistic in its way and in the way that we've chosen it to be, so that we can choose if we decide to wake up. But our reality is being created for us so that we can see sort of where our blockages are to unconditional loving presence all the way along from the moment we're born and conceived to this whole physical transgression, you know, of ourselves. So I guess it started from when I was born. And so, you know, when I was born, I was very curious. I was born into a family that was atheist, so didn't really have any real relationship with the universe, God, or any type of thing outside of the physical reality. And so I grew up with this very scientific, sort of literal understanding of life, that life is just the way that it is, and you don't question how or why. You just kind of go along with the fact that you need to get up in the morning and go to school and eat your breakfast and go to work, and then you come home and you watch an hour TV and you know, you do this thing and then you clean the dishes, and then so it's very mundane and very robotic kind of routine life. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you know, I grew up with this understanding that that is life, and that's what you do. And then you get married and you have kids, and then you repeat the process, and you know, rinse, cycle, repeat. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I lived with that reality for most of my childhood, you know, but I had these really strange events happen throughout my childhood that I think scared the heck out of my mom, and also maybe my sisters and people that knew me. But I knew that something was really different with me. Not necessarily me, that I am different, because everything happens to most people, but I think a lot of the time we get shut down on these magical events. Or, you know, when you're a kid, you're like, I was playing with fairies all day, and your mom's like, I'm pretty sure you weren't playing with fairies. You know, like these types of things. It's taking us back from the multidimensional space into this literal 3D world. So I had many experiences like that. I was a child that didn't speak very much. I loved to witness things. And a curious story that I shared on one of my other shows was that when I was little, I had this real obsession with like the unknown, or like the death space, even when I was very small. And so my mom, she would give me baths, and I had these little floaty letters in the bathtub. I don't know if you heard this story. And then I was playing with the bath letters, but this was before I could read or write. And so I decided to like write something on the wall. So what I wrote actually was like, I want to die. With the little foamy letters on the back of the bathtub. And she came, and I remember only this because I didn't really know what I wrote until she told me after. But she like grabbed me out of the bathtub and she wrapped me with a towel and she said, "What is wrong with you?"
Oh, yes.
And I didn't know what was happening, but I think my soul and my higher self already knew what I was preparing for at a specific point in my life.
Yes.
So I'll get to that actual experience in a little, but I think it's important to talk about these little synchronistic events. So sort of these coincidences, so to speak, that happen along the way, just to indicate that, you know, I feel through these experiences, we walk a destined path. Our higher self in our frequency, we walk a destined path when we are associated with the frequency of that level.
Yes.
So of course, sometimes we drop out of that frequency of the higher self and we make decisions that are out of harmony and in disharmony. And then we pay for it via experiences that we call into our lives on that frequency band. But when we can continuously return back to the higher self, we already know where we're going because we're already there.
Yes. Yes.
And actually the journey is quite short. It's just an active decision. Do I choose love here or do I not?
Exactly. Sarah, I want to take a moment about that how as a child doing that. And I just wanted to kind of put a light on the response of the outside world, right? The response of your mother from a place of non-understanding. And what I'm really feeling is, as a collective humanity, if we stop imposing a perception of fear on things, then we can actually feel into the truth of maybe what's being expressed, right? Because your nature as the child writing that wasn't from a fearful place. And it wasn't from what adults would consider a suicidal, or, you know, you were possessed by some entity that wants to kill you. It wasn't anything like that. It was you expressing something you were feeling inside. And as you were speaking, you know what I was really tuning into was it was the desire to return to love. The I want to
Yes.
die was saying, I want to
I
return. Yes.
want to die.
Yes.
The
Yes.
I, the ego wants
Yes.
to die because at that time, actually, it was around the age of 3. And that's when our
Mhm.
egos as human beings start to become formed, right? We start to understand, the world through our perceptual experience that then is liquored by our parents' perceptual experiences. And then we start to decide through the I mind, sort of what identity we carry to look at our reality outside of us to judge it, right? So in that moment was two actually really special things that I'm so happy that you mentioned is one was that my higher self was not living in fear and there was this
Mhm.
desire to return home in a way. And then my mother's, response, which was more fear-based because of her programming to believe that that is scary in some way or that is wrong or there's something wrong with this child or wrong with the situation that there's could be something that she needed to be fearful of because in our societies we don't welcome aspects of transition, the biggest one being death, right? And when
Mhm.
we really go there and come back we kind of recognize that there is no death, there's like a life after life. But when we release or die to the I,
Mhm.
we can live the life that God intended for
Mhm.
us to live instead of what the I intended our life to be, or our parents' I,
Yeah. Yes.
or our
Yes.
society's I. So yeah,
Mhm.
so there was that event, and then there was also curious events about like a little short story that I had written. I don't know if you listened to this too, that I'd
Mm.
written. So the first short story that I wrote also, which was very concerning, is that I wrote about being wheeled through a hospital corridor, watching fluorescent lights pass my head, being wheeled to my death. And I was only then, I guess, 8.
Mm.
And so my teacher then contacted my mother and said, we're a little concerned because like all the other children are writing about their bike or something like that. And I'm writing about like my death and I'm being wheeled. And so when I actually was in the hospital, getting wheeled to the hospital room when I was in a coma, that is actually what I saw
Mm.
during my experience that then confirmed to me now that that was destiny, that
Mhm.
there was a part of my soul that already knew that I was going to transgress that.
Mhm.
And then my full body goosebumps always when I speak these stories. But my mom asked me, she said, if you keep doing things like this, because I used to be a very daredevilish teenager. I was a very quiet child, but a very daredevilish. She's like, you're not going to live, if you're going to keep doing stuff like that. And I was like, it's okay, mom. I'm going to die before I'm 30 anyway. And then when I died, I was actually 29 years old
Mm.
in my Saturn return. So
Wow.
So those are just two
Mhm.
real big stories, I guess, that talk about the synchronicity before the event. And then if we get into the event, what kind of happened before that was that I kind of went through, even though those small experiences when I was a kid, I still couldn't embody that consciousness, so I still was programmed by my in
Mm.
school. I went to school, I went to university. I knew that I was interested in health, but spirituality was this foreign thing to me. I did at some point ask my mom, how do I be a spiritual guide? And I looked in Google how to be a spiritual guide. And I said, do I have to go to school for that? I remember actually asking her and she said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how you do that. And I said, I just think I'm supposed to be like a guide, like a spiritual guide. But I was like 16 or something at the time, so all these little things. But then I went through school and I got a job and I did these things. So I actually worked for an insurance company and I did the regular thing and I got a house and I had a partner that was very regular. We had a regular life. So I went through the track of what society wanted me to do, but inside, I felt like something was so off. I just didn't feel like that was happiness for me. I didn't feel like it was alignment. And it's curious because, society tells us get the home, get the partner, get the kids, get the money, work up the corporate ladder and you'll be happy. But when I got there, I recognized that that wasn't happiness. There was something missing here. And my soul was telling me, go the other way, go the other way. But my ego was so scared about going the other way that I fought it for a very long time. But then it came to a point where I couldn't fight it anymore. And that was going over the edge. Part of my spiritual path was like, yo, she's almost at the edge. She's going to go over. And I was like, no, no, please, no. But then I couldn't help it. I literally became depressed. And I was like, didn't feel like I was motivated to do all the things on my obligation do list that I had to do anymore. And so I just At one point, I think I lost it, and everybody thought I lost my mind, but I did, which was like kind of the best thing that ever happened.
Yay! Yeah.
Yeah, when we lose our minds, right? And we come back to
Yes.
who we are as a being, as a
Yes.
soul. So then
Yes.
I went through this experience, and then so I ended up like selling everything. We had a house, and I had moved to BC and everything. So I sold a house, and then I decided to live out of my car. I had a smart car. I was like, you know what? I just want to live in the middle of the forest and study plants. And the reason why that came to me is because started asking myself, like, I didn't know how to find my purpose. I didn't know any of this yet. It was still kind of fresh and new to me. I mean, spiritually, I understood a lot of things theoretically, but I didn't understand the lived experience about living my life as a being, a spiritual being, as you know. You can understand
Yes.
spirituality from a theoretical
Mhm.
standpoint, but once God actually puts you through the process of understanding how to live life in that embodied state of consciousness, there's a complete disconnect, until you
Yes.
cross that bridge over into the embodiment of a spiritual understanding and as a lived life, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I guess going back to that point is that I just knew that I was unhappy. And so I didn't know how to find my purpose, but I knew that I was unhappy. So then I said to myself, okay, well, if I do anything, what would bring me happiness? And all I wanted to do was live in the forest and study
Mhm.
plants.
Mhm.
And I always loved nature, but I wanted to go with like super hardcore. So I was watching all these like do it yourself things, survival stuff. And my favorite movie at the time actually too was like Into the Wild, which
Mhm.
kind of I think that embedded into my subconscious, and actually then I manifested an aspect of that story too, you know,
Yes.
as part of this soul path and this mission. But that movie was very pinnacle for me. Like I remember watching and being amazed about the courageousness of a young man to be able to say, I'm not part of this society because it's sick, and I
Mhm.
choose to go my own way, and I choose to go north, back to
Mhm.
truth,
Mhm.
And so I had the same sort of thing, and I didn't I just felt like I needed to be around plants, and I needed to be around nature, and I wanted to see what is the truth that we're here living. Why am I on earth, and what is the truth? So I figured, you know what, if I live as simply as possible, closer to like the life my ancestors lived, then I would be closer to truth because I'd be out of the matrix, I'd be out of this society. So I started living in this trailer in the middle of nowhere in this little town north of Lumby. Well, it wasn't even a town, it was a little place north of Lumby, which is a small little town in British Columbia. Well, I guess the closest orientation would be like to Vernon or Kelowna, which is in Canada, in British Columbia. And I knew a good friend of mine at the time, Don, when he knew I was going through this transition of leaving my partner and, leaving the house and everything. He was so sweet and kind. He said, if you want, you can be on the property and make wild teas and live on the land,
Mhm.
for the summer in this little trailer, but it doesn't have active electricity, and we don't have maybe the running water associated with your trailer, but you can live here. And I was just like, yes, yes, that's what I want to do. And so I started living in this trailer and studying plants. So not in the traditional way, I wanted to spend time with the plants to create relationships with them. So a lot of my days were spent in the forest with certain flowers, sitting with them, looking at them, getting down to their level, not just
Mhm.
picking them or foraging them, but like having a relationship with nature in a deeper way. And that was quite magical because
Mhm.
what I started to recognize is the plant consciousness and our consciousness are working at different speeds. So when I slow my consciousness down, I can hear them, and then maybe they can hear me. So I
Mhm.
was building these relationships with plants. And in the meantime, didn't know consciously yet, but was going to go through one of the biggest transitions and initiations that my soul needed to go through so that I could be sort of ordained into this
Mhm.
true path, of returning back to innocence, I want to say, returning back to a pure state of consciousness.
Mhm.
So, what happened was when I was there, I started studying and working with a plant called Angelica root. So, for those people that don't know, Angelica root is a plant that's part of the carrot family. It has white flowering tops and a root bottom, but basically it's used to help to regulate the female hormone system. So, it works on the womb. It works on regulating menstrual cycles and providing cleansing to the organs. And so I was very called to work with this plant. So I had been making teas and tinctures with this plant and But one day specifically, I felt called to go into this marshland. And in this marshland, I saw the plant that spirit wanted me to walk around. It was so apparent because when I walked into the marshland, I could just focus on that one plant. And it was like in the center of this marshland. The thing though with this plant is it has this white flowering top because it's a carrot family plant, but other plants look very similar to this. And one of them that looks very similar to this plant is a plant called water hemlock, which is one of the most poisonous plants in North America. So the way that you tell the difference of these is actually the root systems, where the hemlock will have like a chambered yellow type of root, and the angelica has like more of a ginseng root. But when I went to the center of this marshland, there was a whole bunch of different carrot family plants growing, and it's very hard to tell the difference. But I know specifically that spirit was like, "This is the plant, but it's just for you, no one else." I got that specific understanding from that relationship with the plants, telling me this one is specifically for you, not to be shared with anybody else, just for you. And so I harvested this plant, you know, knowing that it's an angelica. But what I feel happened was maybe, and we don't know this definitively, but maybe the groundwater was contaminated with the energy and or poison of water hemlock growing in its vicinity, that then created a contamination. Interesting.
Wow. Yes.
Amalgamation of the plant angelica root, which is the plant of angels,
Yes.
white, and
Yes.
hemlock, which is the plant of darkness, which is not one or the other, because no plant is really good or bad or light or dark or poison or not. They're all medicine, okay? But this amalgamation of this light and dark plant together in it. So what I did was I harvested the plant, I brought it back, made it a sun infusion. So that means you soak it in water as a decoction and you leave it in the sun. And so every day I would go and make these like prayers at the top of the mountain. I would do yoga and I just not wear clothes because I wanted to connect myself with this energy of the earth. So every day I would go up and I'd pray and I'd meditate naked on this hill. And so this one time I decided to bring that concoction to the top of the hill with me. So I guess if I go back a little bit to give a little bit more context, there's a couple things that want to be mentioned. One is that before this whole journey started, I was gifted a necklace with the symbol of the labyrinth on it. And I didn't know what this symbol meant yet fully, but I just knew I was completely drawn to it. So because I didn't know what it meant, on one of the days I was on top of the mountain meditating and doing yoga naked, I felt the call to ask this symbol to show me everything that you need to show me for why I have this. I want to know what you mean and why you're with me. And then I made a prayer to Mother Earth or whatever, because at this time I was like, I don't care, universe, Mother Earth, whatever, whoever is there, tell me what the truth is. I am naked and fully surrendered to what that is in my life. I have nothing else. I have to let go everything conventionally that I feel like I can let go of to meet you here now. And I made that invocation. And then actually, the next day, was the day that I actually died. And for those of you that don't know, a labyrinth is a symbol of death and rebirth, or death and birth, and often is used with midwifery, or with people that understand, life transitions. But it's a pathway, basically a narrow pathway with one road back towards the heart and back towards the truth and back towards our essence. And so Spirit was providing me with the context through a symbol to guarantee that I understood at some point, right? Why I had to go through this initiation through death to come back with wisdom. But I couldn't put those together until after I came out of the coma, right?
Right.
So what ended up happening is I went to the top of the hill then. So to the day that I actually died, but I would say the day that I actually started to know life, is I went to the top of the hill like I usually do, and I drank this decoction of the angelica root that was probably connected with the hemlock in some way. And within 15 minutes, I knew something was terribly wrong. So I started to get this weird double vision, and I could feel in the pit of my stomach that there was this intense nausea, like a nausea I never experienced before in my life. And everything started becoming disoriented, and I started to profusely sweat. And then in this moment of profusely sweating, I just knew that something was terribly wrong. And there's a pathway to walk back to my trailer. and I was butt naked, but I knew that I didn't have the time to kind of walk and meander back. So I jumped off the ravine, and there was hawthornberry bushes, raspberry bushes, like it was really painful.
Oh,
And because of course, if everybody's picked raspberries before, you know that this is like painful. I just like dove down to try to get back as soon as possible to my trailer. And I still didn't even know what I was going to do at that time, but I knew that I just had to get back and try to find someone. So I dropped off the ravine. I went to the trailer. And as I went to the trailer, I started continuing feeling sick, feeling sick, feeling sick. And then I remember I got into my trailer and I put this smock on. And then I was like, okay, so what do I do? So then I basically got a bag and then made myself vomit because I thought whatever I needed to get out, I just get out. So then I made myself vomit. I tied the bag up. And then I started to look for my plant book to see if there was any contraindications to angelica root, because I didn't think that there was anything else in there but angelica. So I'm looking at my plant book and I'm reading, and it's like angelica, and I can't find anything. And then all of a sudden I get this real big push to turn the page. So I turn the page over in the book, and on the next page it says water hemlock, and in bold it says 2 drops of the resin of this plant will kill a man in 15 minutes. And in that moment, I could feel my whole body drop completely all the way down. Like, when you feel like you're falling when you fall asleep. And then I was like, oh my God, I could die. Like, I think I'm going to die. So then in that moment, I actually laid down in the back of the trailer for one quick moment. And then I was like, something inside was like, do not fall asleep. Do not go to sleep here. Which was interesting because it's like that Into the Wild scene, when he kind of goes to sleep. And I was like, do not fall asleep. So then I got up with my smock. I took my bag of vomit. I took the book, and then I started to walk down to the house, the main house. But I didn't think anyone would be there because during the day, sometimes they're out in the forest, not every time are people there. So, but what happened was when I was walking up to the house, Dawn, which is the person that invited me to his land, and then this woman, Willow, which a curious name, she had just moved actually to the wildcraft forest a couple of days before. And I remember her telling me, she was like, oh my God, I'm so excited to meet you. I've heard so much about you. I'm so excited to know you. And I hadn't had a real conversation with her just yet. But I was walking up to the house feeling like profusely sweating and everything. And her and Dawn are sitting there almost like if they were receiving me. So we're like ready to receive me, like both of them. And I was like, oh, thank God that they're here. And so I walked up to them and I said, something's wrong. You need to call poison control. You need to call 911. I was really scared at the time. So I was like, poison control, 911. And then I showed them and they're like, no, it's okay. Just come inside, have some tea, relax. Cause they're like, she's just freaking out. Like, it's okay. Just have some tea. I'm like, no more tea. Like, call poison control, whatever. So as soon as I got in the house, they're like, okay, well, here's some water. That was interesting. I started to drink this water. And then after I drank this water hemlock's actually activated by water. So it's like ayahuasca, you take something and it's like a initiation or activation of the medicine, but it was also probably ordained to have that happen at that time. So I drank the water and then I just like profusely vomited. And then I remember telling them, don't touch anything, because I was trying to show them that it could be hemlock. And so by this time, I'm starting to go into this space where I'm like very cold and nauseous and tremoring. And then it's so interesting because Willow, the woman that I hadn't met yet, turned out to be a retired emergency services nurse from Calgary that just arrived on the scene for me. She had this little house called the Gingerbread House, little pink trailer, and she had brought for her blood pressure cuff. She had brought her equipment with her. Like, what are the chances of that, right? So she came with her equipment. Willow, grandmother.
Grandmother Willow.
Grandmother Willow tree. So then when I was in there, I remember then in and out, now I'm kind of coming out of mind consciousness. But she was telling me, she was like, all right, don't panic. We're going to just take your vitals. She's like, my son's with me. He's going to call the ambulance and the ambulance is going to come. Don't worry, everything like this. But all I could start to say was, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I am so sorry, because I knew it was time. I could feel it. I could feel just how much it was. The curious thing about this plant, hemlock, is that hemlock affects the peripheral nervous system. So all of your body goes numb from the neck down, but it does not affect the brain function. So during this experience of dying, and how water hemlock kills you is you suffocate to death because your diaphragm no longer works anymore and you can only take in very limited amounts of oxygen. So you die from basically, I guess, asphyxiation. Is that the curious thing is that, so you die of asphyxiation, but it doesn't affect your brain. So you have consciousness. I had consciousness through the numbness of all of my organ systems. So I could actually feel every element leaving my body. So with that consciousness, this is how I believe I was able to transcend through this experience in this 3D physical reality into the multidimensional reality with knowing. And so during this experience, and I'm coming in and out, but then by the time then, okay, so I guess I'll go back to the story a little bit. They called the emergency services vehicles. They said, your closest hospital is Vernon, so it's about an hour away. We don't have anything close to you right now. But then, so she's going to have to wait an hour for the ambulance to come, basically. And so Willow, with her expertise, looked at my blood pressure and she said, no, she doesn't have an hour. Her eyes are dilating in front of me. Her blood pressure is at 0. Her heart rate is dropping. And I could hear her. And then she would come back to me. She's like, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. You just focus, But then miraculously, 15 minutes after they got off the phone with the emergency services, they called back saying that miraculously there's a vehicle in Lumby, a basics vehicle, to come get her within 15 minutes. So then they said they were going to send an advanced vehicle from Vernon Hospital to meet me halfway so that they could transfer me over to the advanced vehicle to be brought to the hospital. And hopefully then that would be faster. And so they said yes. And so what ended up happening is that then I started going into grand mal seizures now and shaking all over. So then you start losing basically all control, basically of body functions, right? What happened was they put me in the basics vehicle, and I'm in and out of consciousness right now in my mind, but I'm still conscious through the whole thing, but out of my mind. They bring me in the basics vehicle, and then I lose breathing. So I lose breathing 1 minute, which is so coincidental, before getting switched from the basics vehicle into the advanced vehicle. So I went without oxygen for 1 minute, and then I got transferred, and then they put the breathing tubes in me, and then I was rushed to the hospital. And when I arose in the hospital, that I could feel the doors slamming open and me getting wheeled and seeing all the fluorescent lights passing my face in the corridor, being wheeled to my death. So I didn't recognize it in the moment because it's just too much to comprehend. But later when I thought, I was like, oh, wow, it's because spirit wanted me to know that was going to happen, So they induced my coma when I got to the hospital because they needed to pump my stomach, and they put activated charcoal actually in my system to hopefully draw in the poison and to extract it from my body. But none of the doctors had very much experience with this, obviously. So they didn't know if I was going to make it. They didn't know if my organs would survive. They didn't know if I'd had brain damage. They didn't know any of this. So they kept me in the coma. And then during the coma, I had awareness. So this was my official 5-day in-depth plant medicine journey.
Yes.
With the water hemlock plant.
Wow.
It's a little bit more dead than ayahuasca, but it lasted for 5 days.
Oh, yeah.
So can you imagine though, like in an ayahuasca experience or a similar plant medicine experience, in which I've done many ceremonies actually since after that event, or if any of the viewers have done ceremonies, how profound even minutes in a medicine ceremony can be. It's not about time, of course, but 5 days is a very long window for that kind of experience. So it was quite
at
amazing.
any point as you were having that, in the 5 days, because my understanding and my experience is the timelessness. Yes. So you don't have a sense of time at all.
No.
And in certain aspects, you can be having an experience that's lasted literally 1 minute in clock time.
And that it feels like a lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
I
that
feel like
must have
I've
been
lived many.
incredible. Yes. Many lives in five days of that experience.
And it's true though, because we can live
Mhm.
many lives actually in this present moment because we have
Yes.
frequency selves that are different dimensions, right?
Yes.
But in
Yes.
that space, yes, for sure. So it was like a lifetime of learning and
Mhm.
amalgamation in the human mind as we, conceptualize time. But
Mhm.
for me, it was just like go to sleep, wake up.
Yep. Yes. The
Also,
blink of
right?
an eye. Yes.
Yes, a blink of
Yes.
an eye with so many things that happen all at once. And actually,
Yes.
that's curious because I think I've met you there. We'll talk about
Mm,
that in a
yeah.
little moment.
Yes.
So then basically, I guess I'll
Mhm.
just explain more of the out of body experience that
Yes.
started to happen to
Yes.
me. So if anybody wants to know about what happened, in that space. So I felt actually every element leave my body. So first is the earth element leaving. So my body became completely still. Like you can't
Mhm.
move anything anymore. It becomes
Mhm.
stiff. And then in that moving, it's kind of like that earth element being leaving the body. Your ability to control your physical reality is gone.
Mhm.
Right. And then second to
Mhm.
that is like water. So all your orifices become dried up. So no more
Mhm.
saliva in the mouth, no more sweating, nothing like this. And then that goes. And then third is breath. And that happened to me when I was in the ambulance, no more
Mhm.
breath, not being able to breathe. And then fourth is ether. So actually living my physical body, and then moving into
Mhm.
another state
Mhm.
in the ether. So you kind of move through death through the different elements. The densest element goes first and then the rest.
Mhm.
And as you leave these, then when I left one ether, I left through the top of my head
Mhm.
and I could see myself in the hospital bed. My hair was all over the place. I have really long hair. So it was like all over the place, black hair. And I could see all the doctors and all the nurses coming in and out and helping. My parents ended up flying in from Ontario. My other sister actually flew in from Korea.
Mhm.
So yeah, so they all came, so I could see them coming and going. But I want to actually
Mhm.
speak. Should I speak about the story about my sister in Korea?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so there's a synchronicity that happens. So again, it's hard because there's layers, right, of every
Mhm.
process. It can
Yes.
go really
Yes.
complex and then not. So my sister was in Korea at the time teaching English, and the day in which that I had gone into basically the grand mal seizures, which is when I was in the forest, I heard this story after basically my mom had told me. But
Mhm.
at that time, I had left and I wanted to go and see. I left my body and I wanted to go make sure everybody was okay. So I was trying to go and find my sister and find my parents and tell them I was okay, my spiritual self, right?
Mhm.
So I was doing that in that realm. Then, when I was in the hospital in the coma, my sister came to my bedside, and once my breathing tube was already out and I could speak a little bit, I asked her, the first thing I said was, "Did you see me? Did you see me? Because I was there. I was there. Did you see me?" And then my sister was like shocked and just left the room.
Mhm.
And then after I said, "What was wrong with her? Why did she do that?" And my mom says, "Well, you know what is really interesting?" And I said, "What?" She said, "When your sister was in Korea, she was going up the elevator, you know, and she didn't know what was happening to you. And she said she was in the elevator and there's this other woman there in the elevator going up. And all of a sudden the elevator stopped and started to shake. And she said to the other lady in the elevator, 'Oh my God, this is crazy. The elevator's like going through a seizure.'"
Mhm.
And then I guess I don't know what happened after that, but then she went back to her room, right? But then, so when I told her, I said, "Hey, did you see me? Did you see me when I came to
Mhm.
see you?" I think she got really scared or she was just shocked.
Mhm.
I did come and see her and she did experience the shaking, and she even
Yeah.
said actively, "Oh my God, it seems like this elevator is having a seizure," before her
Mhm.
even knowing that I was in coma.
Mhm.
So that's
Yes.
one synchronicity, big one. There's many, right?
Yes.
So that's one big one. And so then when I left my body, then my hair was all over the place. Then the next place that I went to, so this is convoluted. So in the sense it's not linear, like we're saying.
Right.
It's
Right.
not of time. So I can explain
Right.
it like I think it has a timeline,
Yes.
but it's not like exactly
Yes.
time. So one event is like happening at the same as the other events.
Yes.
There's no
Yes.
real like
Yes.
this and then this happened and then this
No.
happened.
Yes.
So in the space, I witnessed
Mm.
also this darkness. Okay, so I guess first I'll
Mhm.
explain. When I first left, I saw myself floating on top of my body. Second to that, I witnessed this like great view of this landscape with these waters that were crystal clear.
Mm.
And when I looked down into these waters that were crystal clear, and every time I talk about it, my whole body gets goosebumps because I'm connecting with that
Mm.
space of
Mm.
unlimited consciousness, which is
Mm.
what I feel like that was. It's, some people call it the Akashic realm or whatever. But for me, it was like limitless consciousness that I could peer into. And there was a clarity in that peering where I could know anything and everything and all things all at once as I looked at the reflection of myself. That I was not me, though. You know, I'm not me as in my identity, but I looked into myself and then everything and saw everything in this clear placid lake. So I call that state the clear placid lake state.
Yes.
And then, you know, after that, but again, I mean, after is like at some point.
Right.
There was then the darkness of darkness, like nothing, zero, like no room for, like, and so I wasn't even in my body now. There's no body of me, but there is the I of me in a consciousness. So there's no ego I, but a being of energy that is me. And I was immersed in this darkness. And I remember the darkness just feeling so peaceful and so content, but also flat, you know, just like this open space of void potential. And then at the end, not end, but in the midst of the blackness, there was a small, tiny dot of light that then when I focused on that light, it just totally raptured me. Like it just came so fast and all over my body that it was this illumination, instantaneous, that came over my body. And in that moment, I felt completely whole. Like it was rapturous. It was completely shattering to every part of my existence. And that was what I consider to be an aspect of home. So there's a wholeness, completely, this oneness, total embodiment of all that is.
Yes.
Then in that moment, after that, I went through a realm where there are other beings. So there are other beings, but there's like, so there's many stages of this, but that you could say there's wrathful beings, you could say there's angelic beings, you could say that there's lots of different beings, but all of those maybe had association with me in my eye, maybe a form of my identity that I need to see in a specific place to understand something. So still, it's like a school or a learning ground, but on top of this real life learning ground. Maybe people that don't have this level of understanding might not understand, but those that do, if they're listening, will understand what I'm talking about.
Yes.
There's a higher level of school.
Yes. And I for people who are maybe new to this kind of talk and this kind of experience, it's kind of helpful just to imagine experiencing metaphor and symbol and having relationship to that. Like we're being shown things, and it's not to say that there's a literal, you know, entity or something necessarily. What we're saying is that this is, it's a symbol that's speaking to your own soul and being for your own interpretation and understanding. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. And we have that on the physical earth plane school as well. Like if we see 1111 or we see a bird flying around us, or we have different symbolisms, right? Or even personal manifestations of things, right? They're all pointing us back to some aspect of learning so that we understand truth deeper, right? So this was also happening on the multidimensional level in that space. But then all of a sudden, though, after that, it was like I had to meet some of these characters up there. There was one moment with then I started to see everybody who loved me, everybody who loves me, and anybody that would ever love me all in 1 second. And so there was faces that I knew and faces that I didn't know yet, and energies that I knew. You're one of them. This is why we were speaking about that earlier. When we first started our call, there's a camaraderie. There's already a relationship in the energetic realms of knowing each other on that frequency. And so you were there already. And many others have been, and many other people that have worked with me too, with in sessions that have contacted me and said, I know you. They've come and we've had connection all over the world, you know. So I knew all of that in 1 minute. And it was like love so powerful, you know, that it was just like all at once, like faces, experiences, plants, animal things, everything, but all this frequency of love. And once I identified with it again, so this was like an I identification, I got vacuumed back into my body and I opened my eyes. And in the moment of opening my eyes, then I could see then my parents there around me, and they were like stunned because they weren't expecting me to come out. And so I just looked at them, and I had the breathing tube in me and everything. And so I asked for, with my hands, something to write with. So they gave me a pen and paper. And the only thing I tried to write was love, because that's it. And that's why I returned. And that's why we are returned. And that's why we are here. The innate purpose of our life is to love. But we don't understand the depth of that love, because we have been programmed and indoctrinated for generations and enslaved as souls to forget what that unconditional loving presence is. And so we create karma, and we create experiences for ourselves and other people that take us out of the frequency of love, and we don't even know that we're doing it. And so, I come back with this message to humanity about that frequency of love and how it could be shared. And when we share in that frequency of love, we are co-creating with God himself, which is love itself, this heaven on earth experience. So miraculously, after 5 days of being in the coma, I woke up through the act of love, through the act of God, back here. And 2 days after that, miraculously walked out of the hospital with nothing. So at first, I couldn't spell the alphabet. I didn't have logical mind, but I had awareness. And that's different.
Yes.
That's different. And so the person that I was before was a very I-based person. It was very identity-based. And then what that transition did for me was sort of paint over the canvas of who I thought and drew and had drawn on what I was. So kind of like a makeup, like taking off my makeup, taking off the mask of who I'm trying to be and being then fully myself. It was then painting over it in white and saying, I'm fresh again. I am new. I'm innocent. I am ready to be painted by God, rather than just be painted by the universe that I feel like I have no control over. Because I then am coming back into my sovereignty as a soul and out of slavery as a body. So that might be really complicated, but I just said, but there's a transmission here with the what and how it wants to be said. And it's curious and powerful, especially now, because now we're actually in the gateway of the Lion's Gate that's coming up on the 8th of August. And many of us can feel this expansion again. And it happens all the time, every year, every cycle. How many cycles we have is continuous, right? But how many cycles of this expanded process of us being able to see ourselves in a clearer way. So there's a lot of purification that's happening from the gateway opening on the 26th until even after the Lion's Gate, of sort of letting go of these aspects of what's keeping us stuck, what's keeping us controlled, what's keeping us indoctrinated to this 3D programming. And when we do that and we cry and we release and we let ourselves have emotions that are part of our human experience, that can wash through us and we can come home again. So my prayer message during this time for empowerment to come into the heart of a lion is to feel what the waters bring, to come back into grace with all that is. Everything that you are meant to feel, you are meant to feel. And so you embrace that. And in that, then the purification happens through you, right? Not this thing that happens to you to inflict pain. But it's a washing. It's like a baptism of what we need to say sorry to, of what we need to come to understanding with and acceptance with, and knowing, that it's all for us. It's all for our evolution through that cleansing. Right? Back into love again.
Well, everything becomes holy. The anger is holy. The tears and the release is holy. Everything. And as we remove our labeling and our judgment, right, and our expectation that, it's fearful or it's bad, the sensations that we have. I loved how you said you were vacuumed back, right, into your body. Because, there's so many sensations that so many have as their soul is expanding and evolving. And it's almost like the immediate knee-jerk reaction is to say, oh, no, something's wrong. Like your mother when she grabbed you in the tub. Right? That is our programming has us respond to us and all the things and sensations that are going on with us from that place, rather than saying, yes, yes. Like my message right now is open your heart and have the willingness and the courage in this lionsgate, the lion heart. Say
Yes.
yes, yes. And just get out of its way because it will do it. There's a lot
Yes,
of people that have
exactly.
such a desire in their heart to expand and to become more and to understand. And there's a lot of fear with that. And also self-imposed pressure,
Yes.
because just like we were programmed in the outside world to achieve and aspire
Yes.
and work, that's been translated oftentimes to what is going on with our soul. And in fact, that's the opposite. It really is the opposite. It's the courage to let go and to let go again and again and again and more, and just to willingly say yes, even if you feel like you're barely breathing, you've cried more than you think you're going to survive, you feel a rage and an anger has been suppressed for so long that you're afraid if you let it out, bad things are going to happen. But if you just breathe and you just allow and you find those creative outlets, to be in communion with yourself and your heart. I love how you described your relationship with nature and the plants. There's so much that people can learn even just from that idea. What is it when you go and hug a tree? Even if the tree is in a Walmart parking lot somewhere. You know what I mean? What is that really? It's so easy for our humanness to get in the way and think that we are separate from everything. And in fact, it's really not true.
Absolutely. Because there's a huge indoctrinated fear based on judgment of what is acceptable and non-acceptable, based on an ego-created understanding of what's acceptable and not acceptable, not a heart-based understanding. And this is where we subjugate ourselves to slavery because we believe that we can do good things and cannot do other things because they're not good. But the goodness understanding is a mind creation as well. But if we let our heart lead and we feel called to something, to say something, to speak to someone, to feel something, and then we reestablish our connection with true source God, which is accepting us in our imperfection, is actually accepting us in our innocence and saying, you don't have to be anybody to be loved by me, which is God. You don't have to be anybody to be loved. You could be nobody, and that would be the closest way you could get to being close to God, be nobody.
Yes. I have pointed to that a lot, that, and one of the things that I have said is the most extraordinary and unspeakable thing that I ever became was nobody.
Yes.
And that is something that any heart, any soul can open their being to, the experience, and just allow by saying yes. Yes. And the funny thing is that it's so, you, quote unquote, I put that in quotes because who we think we are, again, Sarah, as you were saying, like there's who we think we are, and it's on so many levels. So many levels, and so even what I'm speaking to now about this nobody experience, it's not instantaneous because it moves through levels and frequencies of our being. So we're experiencing and witnessing beingness through what we know to be us.
And we can speak it with the mind and we can say, okay, fine, then I'm nobody.
Yeah.
But we don't really feel what that means until we've purified all of the pains and repressed emotions that we have lodged inside of the body. Because those emotions and those processes and memories are existing at disharmonic frequency states that then give signals back to the brain again to believe that the reality we're experiencing is painful and is bad. So even if we say, okay, fine, then I am nothing, I'm nobody, we still have to go through this acceptance and purification process of lifetimes of grief, of lifetimes of anger, of lifetimes, because we're purifying not just for the self-I, we're purifying for the collective consciousness that has lodged these disharmonic frequencies into the collective field. So that basically links all of us into this samsaric cycle, right? Of continued, I was going to say it, but like hell state consciousness.
Yes.
And that was inflicted on us on purpose, because if you take away somebody's sovereignty with God, you can siphon the energies from these souls, right? And keep a certain type of individual at a point where they cannot return home again. And then block and lock this earth and the beings on this planet from coming back into heaven.
Yes.
Heaven is existing on a frequency plane that can be lived in the body as in now. But we are moving through a process of the embodiment of that, not just the theoretical understanding that when I die, I go to heaven, but I am dying in every exhale. And I'm dying now. And I need to feel what I need to feel and give it loving acceptance, because that's just a part of me that wants to be free again, not stuck and repressed. But it's like, this is the analogy that I give, it's like being locked up in a cage for most of your life. And then the bars miraculously dissolve and the being doesn't leave that spot because it's afraid to cross over the line of where the bars used to be, in fears of where that next path is welcoming them into. But it's because the mind gets subjugated into the way it sees and feels and experiences its reality, that we feel like when we don't have it, we lose our mind. And there's so much judgment in society about losing your mind, because what they do is they indoctrinate you to say, okay, if you lose your mind, you're going to go to where? A psych hospital, where we're going to lock you up and we're going to take away your freedom. But actually, just the message of that itself indoctrinates you so that you live in your own prison, because you can't express yourself fully anyways. So you're actually just crazy in your body, but you don't express the crazy.
Yes, and actually, isn't it flipped? Because the crazy is what we call normal.
Yes.
The crazy is what we call normal, and what we're doing is uncrazying. We're literally, that's what's happening. And
removing those limitations.
Wow. I mean, I feel so excited sitting with you, because we really can speak in multiple languages together. And yes, I want to go back to that about, it is brilliant, because yes, our mind takes words. And as you say, and this happens with many people who are on the spiritual path, you can take many words and say them. You can have affirmations, you can say lots of things, but really, truly, it's good to connect to something and know that that's a state that you are desiring to feel, right? But until those words become your experience, they really are words. And what I think a lot of people have a tendency to do, and this is why I really love that we're bringing this up about emotions, because I would highly encourage people to go into their heart and to feel how they feel. And that means feeling how you really feel.
And expressing
the truth, yes, and allowing it an expression. It must come out of you, because if it's not coming out, it is turning inward. It's turning inward, and it's not serving you. It is not serving you when your rage that you're trying to hold back, that you are so angry at the world or society or whomever or whatever that you're angry at. By not allowing yourself a means to express that energy frequency, that energy is turning itself upon you. And oftentimes it translates for our sweet little humanness that we're attacking ourselves. It's self-hatred. It's self-contempt. And that disables us. It absolutely disables us from feeling who we are and feeling the love that is always right there waiting. It's always present. There's never a moment, I say, there's not a moment of existence that love is not.
Yeah. And the thing that comes up when you're speaking is this word sacred rage. And the reason why rage can be sacred is because it's actually igniting passion to what you truly feel. It's connecting you to your true actual essence inside. But the reason why it's rage is because it's turned into this ball of energy that has been repressed and suppressed for so long that it needs to come out very, like maybe forcefully. But then once that ball is moved through, then we can start to actually feel passion again. And when we can feel passion again, passion leads to purpose, because passion shows us where the way is. But passion has also been a word that's very indoctrinated. To not have passion, to take away passion, to take away drive, to take away this feeling, this makes me feel fun. This is fun. This makes me feel good. That, and we've been told to like not feel anything. And that's the power of the world saying, oh, pull up your pants and be an adult and shut up and don't say anything. And it's funny because actually listen to that word that I said, that transmission of me even saying that word changes the entire frequency of me and Ali's conversation.
Yes.
Also, but it's something to
Yes.
just be aware of the words that we speak to ourselves and others,
Yes.
because that is the frequency that is building your life.
Yes.
Every thought, every emotion is an energy. That's why it's called emotion. Energy is in motion. That's why we need to feel it. If we embody the energy that's in motion, we become part of the flow. We go back to the Tao. We go back to this flow, universal life. But we resist the Tao. We resist the life force. We resist. There is no outlet. And then all of that residual energy gets dislodged, and the cells in our body don't know how to equilibrate, to come back to equilibrium.
Yeah.
They become super stimulated, supercharged, and our body goes into what we call sympathetic nervous system state, where we cannot feel joy, we cannot relax, and we cannot breathe, we cannot be, because our mind then goes into continuous doing.
Yes.
So the way that I was before I died to the way that I was after was that I gave up my way. And I started saying, there is no way. And there's no way that I'm going to do the things that I think are my way, because doing that is creating actually more resistance in my being towards God's way, through me, for others, and ignites the real path of why we're all here, is a service of being the vessels or the conduits of love for everybody, first ourselves, because we become embodied by Holy Grace. We become embodied by the Spirit of God. Our dove descends upon us. We come into the Sophionic body of wisdom. And all these words that I'm speaking as an understanding is a seeding to those that are on this journey and quest to understanding what are these symbols meaning for me, because your higher self is, oh, whoa, I saw a dove the other day. What does that mean? Oh, whoa, I saw these white butterflies. I saw what, you know?
Yes.
Because they're all pointing you back home, actually.
Yes. Yes.
So,
and it's so beautiful for anyone who finds himself in a suffering, to really feel, to really take in the energy in this moment that everything is loving you and everything is singing you home in every moment. And that's so real. It's more real than the thing you think you're experiencing with the suffering, It's just,
it's like the fear of suffering itself creates the resistance to the suffering, which then creates more suffering.
Yes.
But actually, that small little sliver in your finger, if you just take it out, is going to cause so much more like peacefulness if you, instead of pushing it, rubbing it, So it's kind of like the resistance is that pushing, rubbing towards it just being as it needs to be, and seeing it clearly, and then seeing where it needs to be taken out, But what we tend to do is put things on top.
Yes.
Of our illnesses, of our sadnesses. We put things on top of our death even. But what we need to do is we have to recognize that God is giving us an opportunity to let all of that go.
Yes.
To let it out. Because the poison is actually coming from the inside that wants to be expressed. Then it becomes medicine.
Yes.
Because that's all poisons are, actually. Are
It's
killing your ego, killing a part of you that maybe needs to dissolve so that it becomes of medicine. So people always say to me, was this experience tough for you, that you got poisoned, that you almost died? And it's interesting, curious, those words, but really is that I was blessed to receive the medicine that Mother Earth wanted me to receive so that she could kill me and I could return home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And you embody the wisdom of the plant kingdom. Mother Earth, all of that wisdom dwells within your very being. So wherever you go, you bring that with you, and even being here, we understand frequency. In this moment, anyone, at any time, anywhere, any place, that gets to see you and feel you and hear you, gets to feel that also. You know, it's just so much more than just the personal experiences that we have, that are our experiences, because they're experiences that are shared in the oneness that we all truly are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a blessing. It's such a beautiful blessing. I also, I feel called to bring this up as well, which is, you know, we in our judgment of emotions, which is so critical for so many to be on the path coming back home, is that if we look at it like the elements, the fire, we need the fire just as much as we need the water,
Yeah.
right? And the wind and the earth, all of those things that make us who we are in this physical expression. It's just allowing us to be all that we are and taking away all the stigma of it. And it's okay, you know, to feel like you're afraid of your anger because you feel like if you know, start expressing it, you know, you might never stop, or you might do something terrible. But I always say to people, just sit with it and allow as much as you're comfortable with in any given moment, but just let your being know. Let your little one, because I say, you know, it really always feels like it's our innocent little one, right? It's the little one that was in the tub writing the message. You know, that little one, she just wants to know that there's somebody with her or him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just about that presence. Allow yourself to be with it. Put no expectations on it, you know. But the little one leads us home. And Sarah, I mean, so beautifully in your story, it was right there. You were knowing, and you were prepared and readied with all of the symbolism and all of the things along your path to meet you at this moment that was going to be incredibly profound for your physical being.
Yes.
And I can see the love that was woven like a thread through the entirety of the whole thing. And I know that you can too. And that's the beautiful blessing too.
Yeah.
You know, to have the experience where we can witness the love that's present, and that was always present, even when we didn't know it was.
Yes, that's a key, because I think a lot of us, and myself included, we don't know why. And we ask God, why? Why is this happening to me? Why do you do this to me? Like this thinking and feeling that we are victims, right? Because we don't understand or trust God's plan yet. But I guess the message here is, if you trust and you have faith in that divine destined plan, that when you give up yourself to walk, God walks for you, and it's been seeded since you were young. You know, you can stop asking, why did this happen? And start thanking the experience for teaching, and open yourself up to how this is teaching you about compassion, how this and why this is teaching you about love in a deeper way for self and other, so that we can start to finally all heal together. And we are all healing, but to have no more resistance now to healing, to come back into the fire of the lion within you. That is the fire, the central fire that burns up all this illusion, to fully step back into our courage that leads us to our whole and sovereign self as having a complete and beautiful human experience with all the range of colors in the rainbow, with all the emotions, with everything that we are, and love it.
Yes,
Love
and
the
love
tears,
it.
love the
Love
anger,
them.
love the
Yes.
frustration, love the confusion, love the not knowing, love the mystery, love the denial, love the grief, love these things that we feel like we hate ourselves for, we hate our God for. These are the things, and we all have stuff to work on, even myself included, because we came to earth to learn it through a physical body. So that we could feel deep enough to understand the ramifications of spirit on material matter.
And as we open ourselves up to allowing the divine to take over, you know, it's not some instantaneous, easy thing.
No,
You know,
it's a process.
it isn't.
Yeah.
It's a
lifetime.
process. It's a process, and also, you know, the willingness to allow yourself to be present and let things be revealed to you in the way that is intended, versus you imposing something on it. Oh, this must mean this, right? Because we're so indoctrinated into needing this meaning for something. So we're sometimes inspired inside, from our programming to jump ahead and try to put meaning on something too quickly before allowing the meaning to reveal itself to us. And I just, life becomes so delicious.
Yeah, right. That's the good word. That's a good word.
It just becomes so delicious.
And when it's delicious, you can digest your experiences with grace. And that's the reason why so many people have afflictions with their stomach, myself included. That's why the medicine went right there. And when we do medicine, we purge, because that's the stuff that's lodged underneath the diaphragm that we can't digest. It's emotional experiences. And once we can finally welcome and have this deliciousness of our breath and our being and our receptivity of all the external experiences that God is having for you, then we can actually digest them and love them all, so that they can be transmuted into love in a deeper way than we ever thought possible. Even the smallest wisher thing that blows in the wind that goes by your face is like magical. And that's how we return to the kingdom of our innocence. Like you were saying, it's the little kid walking us home. So we have to listen to this little child inside of us that hasn't been seen and hasn't been heard and wants to cry and wants to be upset because it wasn't loved. But if we say you were and have been loved this whole time because God's love was always shining on you, now with this insight, you can now understand and accept these experiences as part of this growth of what you signed up for, to come down here, to have a body, to experience pain so that you could learn compassion. We are learning what that is.
And when they say, it's the children inherit the kingdom.
Yes.
It is this in us. It's this in us. And behold, I make all things new.
And then the curiosity and the passion and the joy and the purpose of play becomes known, because this earth is a playground, and it's not it's turned into like a concentration camp.
I know.
But it's a playground of continuous abundance. Mother Earth provides, but I guess the last keynote that I was getting called to speak about is that welcome the divine feminine, welcome the emptiness, welcome the surrender, let it go. And then from there, watch Father God seed himself into you to become embodied in a deeper way with this Christic light inside of you that creates a body of your own wisdom. And it's that we are moving into. It's an embodiment process. We are leaving behind the days of just practicing what we believe are spiritual practices, and then going back to our everyday thing in our mind of routine. We are ready to leave the shore behind and sail on the waters of our consciousness together and navigate.
Yes.
And to leave behind the structures that bind us in suffering, so that we can all learn to swim together in harmony. And how do you swim? You let go of trying, and the water lifts you up.
Yes,
and that's what we learn in death.
Flowing.
The more I resisted my process in death, the more suffering my body felt. And I had to say to myself, okay, I'm here. I let go. I'm ready. And feel what I need to feel, knowing that all things pass.
Yes. And to those that seem to be focused on this effort to help heal the world, or this, to be a part of these causes and this kind of thing, I want to say, return to your heart, your own heart, the courage that you have to meet everything that you are and to love everything that you are lifts the world.
Yes.
It's not an action that you have to do. You don't need to start making signs and going to protest. You don't have to do that. Truly, at the energetic level of your heart is all of the power. With God, all things are possible. Yes, and that presence is within you. It's not somewhere outside.
All of the recognition has already been made.
Yes.
So we don't have to be the person that is recognized. We don't have to be the person that is the savior, that is helping.
Yes.
Even, we don't have to really even market ourselves to help, because actually we are not the helpers. God is helping people through us, and we have to empty ourselves of the I in order to become the servants of God, of love. And so we can leave behind that mentality of needing to do and try so hard. And the feminine is just this. It's a flower, a rose that blossoms in our heart that then draws and calls and magnetizes the experiences that are meant for us by its own scent, by its own frequency that it emits. Embody that. Let go of the fear, trust, and have faith in the destined path for yourself, and we all go home together.
Yeah. And the deliciousness.
And your name is so perfect for this, because your name is Ali Ray. It's like you're an ally, like you're an ally in this ray of light, but also it's like the ally of the ray of light, like you're providing a guidance through this pathway. But it's your being that's doing that as well as mine. But I see the reflection of your name in me, and I'm thinking, wow, and I'm feeling, it's the spacious corridor that allows the light in us both. Right?
Yes.
And say, for example, this is the vision that I just get, is that if all of us were this vessels of emptiness and we all held hands, then what makes us all is a universal conduit for the truth. And that's how we co-create a new paradigm together. Yes. And nothing else needs to be done. No plan needs to be made. No special thing. No marketing solution. No nothing. Because the frequency resonating inside of you is that. And, this is a testament too of that faith. And you never have to search for anything at all, because what's meant for you is on its way.
Yes.
Even if it looks like death.
Yeah, exactly.
It's on its way to you.
It
anyways.
Is. Yes. And, in what you were just saying, I've had that vision, and I say the words hand in hand and heart in heart. That's the way.
That's the way. It's a circle.
Yeah. Circle. Oh, this is such a beautiful, oh my goodness, what a beautiful joy. A delicious time with you. Beautiful sister. What a gift for my own heart, but for the world too.
Me too. Thank you, everyone, too, that has tuned in to Ali's show, and to open themselves up to deeper understanding through their openness and receptibility through this transmission that came through both of us. Yes. It's perfect for the gateway.
It's just so amazing. This is just such a beautiful gift, and just such deep gratitude for the beauty and the love that God is.
Yes, exactly. That God is.
God is. Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. Beautiful sister. Please, for those of you who do not know my precious sister, Sarah, please get to know her. All of her links are going to be in the comments, in the description. And I'm so full. My heart is so full. And I'm wishing everyone a very beautiful and blessed Lionsgate. May it be a delicious experience of return to your own hearts. And I look forward to having you back, Sarah, to share some more. Thank you so much. An honor and pleasure to know you and to be with you.
Yeah, I feel just the beginning.
Yes. We'll see you soon.